This is in regards to a comment that somebody wrote to me concerning something I said about the Civil War. They wanted to know where I got my information from, being as it's bogus information. Well, to answer the question, I got it from the Library of Congress, okay? Uh, to those that don't know, the Declaration of Emancipation was permanent to uh, get the slaves in the South to revolt, thus tying up the military power of the Confederate Army to try to suppress the revolt, and to help bring in the abolitionists into the Union cause, because actually the abolitionists were staying out of it. If the war was over slavery, why then were there still slaves being sold as late as 1864, 1865 in places like Washington, D.C., New York, Massachusetts, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio? I mean, even in Michigan, there were slaves being sold. But these are all Union states. These are people that fought against slavery. Yeah, right. It's a political correctness move, okay, to help pacify the blacks in the United States. Unfortunately, they're proving to be just as stupid as the white man. I mean, Lincoln, okay, people say Lincoln was a great president. Lincoln was a fucking racist, okay? You need to learn a little bit about your history, okay? Lincoln had an idea. Lincoln was one of those that wanted to send the blacks back to Africa, okay? He wasn't going to send them with provisions or anything to help them survive. He didn't give a shit whether they died off or not. They were just niggers to him, okay? No. What Lincoln wanted to do, Lincoln wanted to get rid of all the blacks, all the Chinese, all the Jews, the Irish. I mean, if you weren't Anglo-white, then you weren't human. You were a subhuman. You didn't even. He wouldn't have signed into law the 14th or 15th Amendment if he had a choice. Why? Because Lincoln would have been a member of the Ku Klux Klan, except for the fact that when the Ku Klux Klan was originated, it was originally an organization much like the Moose Lodge, the AMVETS, VFW, etc., etc. It was a bunch of Confederate soldiers that got together in memory of what they did. Had nothing to do with them chasing down blacks and terrorizing them, okay? That was an issue that came into play after the passing of the 14th Amendment. Or was it the 15th? Either one, okay? But that was their goal, was simply as a fraternal lodge for people who fought in the Confederacy. The Confederate States, Jefferson Davis would have been the first, last, and only president of the Confederate States, should they have won. What they were going to do was, the Confederacy was just a banding together of the southern states. Okay, after the war, if they'd have won, each state would have separated and became a nation unto itself. Okay, they would have made their own laws, made their own currency, etc., etc., etc. I mean, get a flipping clue about what's going on, and maybe you'll get an idea of how things are headed. I mean, when I went to school, I was told one thing. Now I'm here that they're being told another. You know, I got failed and actually kicked out of school for bringing evidence from the Library of Congress into the social studies class, or history class as they called it then, concerning this issue. I mean, they were starting to try to pass off that the Civil War was over slavery. I brought in that much documentation. Okay, it's close to 1,500 pages worth of documentation, which proved that the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery. Slavery was a thriving industry in both the North and the South, before, during, and for a little bit after the Civil War. Okay? Slavery was finally abolished with the Constitutional Amendment. At least illegal slavery. I mean, there's slavery going on in this country today. So, it didn't really change things. If you really, really, really believe that the Civil War had something to do with this issue, then I'd call you a moron, but that's insulting morons, okay? Like I said, you need to learn your history before you can start sprouting about how grand it is, okay? Remember, the winner writes the history, you know? And then you got people that actually believe this bullshit, and it's like, no wonder we're in such a shitty shape that we are, you know? Why people think that they're so entitled to everything, you know? You're not entitled to a fucking thing. The only thing you're entitled to is, well, actually nothing. The Constitution guarantees you the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I got news for you, okay? Life and liberty is a fucking dream. Okay? It's something that you have to reach out and grab yourself. Okay? But unfortunately, you have people like Congress and Senate that pass all these laws that pretty much eradicate life and liberty. Okay? I mean, they stick their noses into everybody's affair. That's not what they're about. Okay? The United States Congress and Senate actually were never intended to rule the country. Neither was the president. Okay? They were meant to act as a, how would we say this? A trade association. Okay? And that's the reason why the South ended up rebelling, because they couldn't understand what right a senator or a congressman from, say, New York had to stick their nose into the affairs of people in places like Georgia, Alabama. I mean, these are states that this person has never even been to, and has probably only heard of through discussion. But they're sitting there passing laws that interfere with these people's life and liberty. Okay? That's what it was about. It had nothing to do with slavery. Well, you want to know where the war for slavery was fought? Okay? It was known as the Kansas-Missouri Border Wars. Okay? That's where the fight against slavery was fought. Sheesh. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much why we have so many morons now. They just go on what they're told, and oh yeah, that must be right. Because they're too fucking stupid to go look it up themselves.